The morning my sister changed the locks, I was standing in the driveway in my nursing scrubs, holding a paper bag with everything I owned inside it. 3 uniforms, a phone charger, my mother's old Bible that nobody else wanted. My sister stood in the doorway with her arms crossed, and she didn't even have the decency to look sorry about it. "This is better for everyone," she said. "You understand." I didn't understand. But I picked up my bag, and I walked to my car, and I drove away from the only home I had ever known. I was 28 years old. I had spent the last 4 years working double shifts at Mercy General, sending half my paycheck home every month, skipping vacations and new clothes and anything resembling a social life, all so my family could keep the lights on. And the moment my sister's husband decided he wanted the house for themselves, I became the problem that needed to be removed. What none of them knew, what I hadn't even fully processed yet myself, was that 3 days earlier, a startup I had quietly co-founded during my night shifts had just been acquired for $38 million. My share was deposited into an account my family didn't know existed. I found out from my attorney via email while I was in the parking lot of a gas station, eating a granola bar for dinner after a 12-hour shift. I had stared at the number on my phone screen for so long that the screen went dark. I didn't tell anyone. Something in my gut told me to stay quiet. That instinct saved me. I want to tell you how I got here. Not the glossy version, not the version where I was always strong and always knew what I was doing. The real version, where I was exhausted and broke and invisible for years, while my sister was celebrated for simply existing. My sister is 3 years older than me. Growing up, she was the beautiful one, the social one, the one my parents introduced first at every family gathering. I was the quiet one who got good grades and didn't ask for much. When my father's construction business started failing, I was 15. I started babysitting neighbors' kids on weekends to help with groceries without being asked. My sister was at the mall. Nobody asked her to help. Nobody expected her to. By the time I was in college, I had taken out loans, worked 2 part-time jobs, and kept my grades up enough to get into nursing school. My sister dropped out of her business degree after 1 semester. My parents told her it was fine, that she'd find her path. When I mentioned I was struggling with tuition, my mother told me I was always so capable, that I'd figure it out. Capable. Like it was a compliment. Like it wasn't just another way of saying you're on your own. I figured it out. I always figured it out. When I graduated and passed my boards, my family threw my sister a party for getting promoted to shift supervisor at the clothing boutique where she worked. The timing was coincidental. The fact that nobody mentioned my graduation at dinner that night was not. I moved back home after nursing school because rent in the city was brutal on a first-year nurse's salary, and my parents said it made sense. What it actually meant was that I became the household's functioning adult. I paid 1/3 of the mortgage every month. I grocery shopped. I took my father to his cardiology appointments when his heart started giving him trouble. I coordinated his prescriptions. I stayed home on the nights my mother's anxiety got bad and she needed someone to sit with her. My sister visited on Sundays. She brought pastries and got the hugs. Her husband, Derek, moved in 2 years after they got married because their apartment lease ended and they were in between situations. That was my brother-in-law's phrase for everything uncomfortable. In between situations. He had a lot of those. He also had opinions about the house, about how the kitchen should be reorganized, about whether my parking spot was really necessary since I worked nights and he worked days. Small things. Death by 1,000 small things. Then my father's health declined sharply in the winter. He needed more care, more appointments. My sister and Derek sat at the kitchen table and decided together, without me, that it would be best if they moved in full-time to help. When I came home from a night shift and found Derek's golf equipment in my bedroom closet, I understood that the decision about space had already been made too. I started sleeping on the fold-out couch in the den. I told myself it was temporary. 6 months later, my father passed away. The grief was enormous and complicated, and I didn't have time to sit inside it because there were arrangements to make, insurance paperwork, his medical equipment to return. I did most of it. My sister planned the flower arrangements for the service and cried beautifully. After the funeral, my brother-in-law started talking to my mother about the house. About how it was a lot to maintain. about how it made financial sense to consolidate, about how having everyone under one roof was actually a gift during a difficult time. My mother nodded along to everything he said. She always did. I was not included in those conversations either. 3 weeks after we buried my father, my sister came to the den where I was sleeping and told me that she and Derek were going to be renovating the space to make it a proper room for when they had children. She told me I had 2 weeks, and that she thought this was actually a really good opportunity for me to get my own place now that I was established in my career. She said it with a smile, like she was doing me a favor. "You've always been so independent," she said. "You'll be fine." There it was. Capable. Independent. The language they had always used to explain away the fact that I was handed nothing. I moved into an extended stay hotel with my paper bag and my 3 uniforms. I did not cry in the driveway. I cried alone in room 114, with the AC unit rattling and the parking lot lights coming through the curtains, and I let myself feel the full weight of what had just happened to me. Not just the eviction, the years of it. The entire structure of a family that had been built on the assumption that I would carry what nobody else wanted to carry and disappear when I was no longer convenient. I let myself feel it completely, and then I stopped. Because I had $38 million and absolutely nothing left to lose. My attorney's name is Paul, and he is the kind of man who speaks slowly and means every word. I had met him 2 years earlier through a colleague whose brother needed startup legal advice, and he had helped me structure my equity stake in the company in a way that protected me entirely. He was the one who called to confirm the acquisition. He was also the one who advised me, quietly, to say nothing to family until I had a clear plan. "People change when money is involved," he said. "Even people you love." I already knew that. I had watched my family change when there was no money. I could only imagine what they would do with the scent of millions. The company I co-founded was a healthcare data platform. I had spent 3 years building it with 2 other nurses who, like me, were furious at how badly information moved between departments and how often patients fell through administrative cracks. We built a system to fix it. We ran it on nights and weekends and days off for 2 years before we found our first real investor. I never told my family. It wasn't a secret exactly. I just knew that if I talked about it, my brother-in-law would have opinions, and my sister would tell her friends, and it would stop being mine. So it was mine. Quietly, entirely. The acquiring company was a large health technology firm based in Chicago. My share came to $38.2 million. After taxes, after fees, after everything Paul walked me through over 4 very dense phone calls, I was left with a number that still didn't feel real when I looked at it. I sat with it for a week before I did anything at all. Then I started moving carefully. I bought a condominium in a building downtown quietly, through an LLC Paul set up, so nothing attached to my name publicly. I furnished it simply. I kept going to work because routine made me feel steady, and because I genuinely loved my patients. I told nobody. My colleagues noticed I seemed less tired. I told them I had finally figured out my sleep schedule. For 2 months, the only people who knew were Paul and my 2 co-founders, both of whom had signed ironclad NDAs as part of the acquisition. The acquisition itself wasn't announced publicly for several weeks, and when it was a business news item, the company name, not the founders individually. I thought I had more time. I didn't account for Derek. My brother-in-law fancied himself a savvy investor. He spent a lot of time on financial news sites and business forums, looking for what he called angles. He found the acquisition announcement on a tech industry newsletter, and because he knew I worked in nursing and had once mentioned I was involved in a side project years earlier, he put it together faster than I expected. He called my sister called my mother, and then all 3 of them called me at once, the calls coming in overlapping succession, 17 in one morning while I was in the middle of a shift. I didn't answer. I texted Paul. "They know. It's starting." He texted back. "Good. We're ready." My sister left a voicemail that was warm in a way that felt like touching a hot stove with an oven mitt. You can tell something is burning even through the padding. She said she had been thinking about me so much. She said she felt terrible about how the housing situation had worked out, and that she hoped I knew it was never personal. She said family was everything, and that she would love to take me to dinner, just the two of us, and catch up properly. She said she loved me. I saved the voicemail. My mother called twice. She said she was worried about me. She said she heard I had done something remarkable with a company, and that she just wanted to hear my voice. She asked if I was eating well. She did not mention the fold-out couch. She did not mention the paper bag. I saved those voicemails too. Derek emailed me a PDF. It was a family investment proposal, 4 pages, formatted with a logo he had apparently made for an LLC he had registered 3 weeks earlier, before he had even confirmed I was actually the person involved in the acquisition. It outlined an opportunity for me to invest in what he called a diversified family holdings vehicle which, as far as I could tell from reading it twice, was a fund that he would control and from which he would draw a management fee. He had included a suggested initial contribution amount. It was $4 million. I forwarded it to Paul without a word. Paul called me within 10 minutes, and I could hear him almost laughing. He told me to do nothing. He said let them come. So I waited. The dinner request escalated into a lunch request, then a coffee request, then my sister simply showing up at Mercy General during what she apparently assumed was my shift change. I know because the front desk called to tell me my sister was in the lobby asking for me. I was standing 30 feet away behind a partition. I asked the desk to tell her I was unavailable. I watched through the partition window as my sister's expression shifted from expectant to confused to something harder and colder. She left after 11 minutes. I timed it. My mother made her move 2 weeks later. She sent a letter, handwritten, on the floral stationery she had always kept in the kitchen drawer. It was 3 pages long. The first page was about my father, how much she missed him, how hard things had been, how the house felt empty now. The second page was about family, how she had always tried her best, how she hoped I knew I was loved, how life was short and grudges were heavy. The third page was about the house. Specifically, about a home equity line of credit that my brother-in-law had apparently taken out against the property 6 months earlier, which was now in default, and about how they were at risk of foreclosure, and about whether I might be in a position to help. There was no acknowledgement of the fold-out couch, no mention of the paper bag, no reference to the 4 years of mortgage payments I had made, or the cardiology appointments, or the nights I sat with my mother when nobody else would. Just the ask. Dressed in flowers. I read the letter 3 times. I held it for a while. Then I did something I had not done in years. I called Paul and I told him what I actually wanted to do, not just what was legally smart. He listened to all of it. Then he told me that almost everything I wanted was entirely possible, and that he had been waiting for me to be ready. I was ready. The first thing we did was quietly purchase the defaulted home equity note from the lender. This is a legal, if uncommon, financial maneuver. A third party can purchase a distressed debt, which transfers the creditor's rights to the buyer. Paul had done it before. It took 2 weeks and a phone call I was not present for. The transaction was processed through one of my LLCs. My family had no idea. That meant I now held the debt against the house. Not the house itself, but the right to foreclose on it if the debt went unresolved. I did not foreclose. That was never the plan. The plan was clarity. I called my sister. It was the first time I had spoken to her in nearly 3 months. She answered on the first ring, and her voice went immediately warm and soft, the voice she used when she wanted something. She called me by the nickname she hadn't used since we were children. She asked how I was, how work was, whether I was happy. I let her talk for 2 minutes. Then I said, calmly, I know about the home equity default. I know about Derek's LLC proposal. I have your voicemail, Mom's letter, and Derek's PDF. I'd like to meet, all 3 of you. Saturday. I'll text you the address. There was a long silence. Of course, she said. Of course, we'll be there. We met at Paul's office conference room. I wore my good blazer. I arrived early. They arrived together, my mother and my sister and Derek, dressed as though for a business meeting, which I suppose it was. My mother hugged me in the lobby, and held on a moment longer than felt natural. My sister smiled. Derek looked around the room quickly, assessing. Paul sat at the head of the table. I sat beside him. Across from me, my family settled in and arranged themselves. I spoke first. I told them I was not angry. I meant it. Anger had burned off somewhere in room 114 with the rattling AC unit. What I had now was clarity. And clarity is much quieter and much more useful than anger. I told them I had listened to the voicemail, read the letter, reviewed the proposal. I told them I understood what they needed. And I told them what was actually going to happen. The home equity debt they had defaulted on was now held by one of my companies. I had 3 options available to me. I could foreclose, which I did not intend to do. I could forgive the debt entirely, which I was not prepared to do without conditions. Or I could restructure it. I had chosen to restructure. Here were the terms. The house would be signed over to a family trust, of which my mother would be the sole beneficiary during her lifetime. My mother would live in that house for as long as she chose to. She would not pay rent. She would have a monthly living allowance drawn from a separate account I had established, enough to cover utilities, groceries, medical expenses, and modest personal spending. She would be comfortable. My sister and Derek would not be on the title. They would not have access to the trust. They were welcome to visit my mother as family members. They were not welcome to treat the house as a financial asset. Derek started to speak. Paul put one hand flat on the table, a quiet gesture, and Derek stopped. I continued. In exchange for these terms, my sister would sign a document acknowledging that she had received no personal financial contribution from me toward any future asset, that she was releasing any potential claim, however, she might choose to frame one against my estate or holdings, and that the arrangement for my mother's care was final and complete. Paul had drafted the document. It was 6 pages. It was airtight. If they declined these terms, the debt would be transferred back to a conventional lender, and the foreclosure process would proceed on its existing timeline. My mother was crying quietly. My sister was very still. Derek's jaw was tight. "You'd do this to your own family," my sister said. Her voice was low and careful. "I'm doing this for Mom," I said. "I'm protecting her from the situation you and Derek created. I'm ensuring she's cared for without anyone being able to reach into that care and pull from it." "And for us?" my sister said. I looked at her for a moment. I thought about the driveway, the paper bag, the fold-out couch, the Sunday pastries and the beautiful crying at my father's funeral, and the voicemail that started with the nickname she hadn't used in years. "You'll be fine," I said. "You've always been so resourceful." Derek signed first, actually, which surprised me. I think he understood faster than my sister did that there was no angle left. My sister signed after him, her signature tight and small. My mother signed last, and when she put down the pen, she looked at me with an expression I couldn't fully name, grief and gratitude, and something that might have been the beginning of understanding. In the months that followed, I watched my family adjust to a new reality. Derek pivoted his energy toward a podcast about personal finance, which had 17 listeners as of the last I checked. My sister kept her job at the boutique and stopped sending me casual texts that ended with requests. My mother settled into the house alone, and something surprising happened. We started talking on the phone. Not because she needed something, just talking. About my father. About old memories. About things she had never said. Those conversations were careful and incomplete and genuinely ours, maybe for the first time. I kept working at Mercy General for another 8 months after the acquisition. I liked the work. I liked my patients. But eventually the scope of what I was building pulled me fully away from the bedside and into something larger. I joined the board of a nonprofit focused on healthcare access in underserved communities. I funded 2 scholarships at my nursing school, named anonymously. I hired a small team and started a second company. This one focused on what the first one had taught me, about what the first one had missed. I am 31 years old. I live in a condo that is mine. I have a closet where nothing belongs to anyone else. I sleep in a real bed, in a real room, with no one's golf equipment pressed against the wall. The paper bag is gone, I don't need it anymore. I want to say something about what it means to be the capable one, the independent one, the one who always figures it out. For a long time, I believed those words were a description of who I was. It took me years to understand they were a system, a way of arranging a family so that one person carries what the others don't want to carry, and gets thanked for it just enough to keep carrying. The scapegoat, the responsible one, the steady one, different names for the same function. You are useful until you are inconvenient, and when you become inconvenient, they hand you a paper bag and call it opportunity. Here is what I know now. Capability is yours. It belongs to you, not to the people who benefit from it. The strength you build in the dark, navigating without a net, learning to survive without applause, that is yours. It cannot be claimed retroactively by the people who left you to build it alone. And when you finally hold the power, you do not owe it to the system that made you carry everything. You owe it to yourself, first, to your peace, to the life you built in the hours they assumed you were just keeping the lights on. Set your boundaries, hold them without apology, protect what you built. And if they call 91 times, let them go to voicemail. If any part of my story sounds like yours, if you've been the capable one, the one who carries it all and gets a paper bag in return, I want to hear from you. Drop your story in the comments, like and subscribe if this resonated with you, and join our community here at Restoration Stories, where we talk honestly about building a life that is fully, unapologetically your own. You are not a guest in your own story. You never were.